Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, coming to you from the beautiful Reedville neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, on Himalaya, and at Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcast. Oy vey, have we got a great show for you today. Our guest is the author of The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the TyrantoCrankaTsuris. His name is Stephen Joseph. Before Stephen joins us, I want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is sponsored by Mommy's Big Red Monster Truck by Allison Paul Kolakowitz. Every kid knows that mommies are the greatest. They are the greatest. They feed us, they take care of us, and they love us with all their hearts. But did you know that they are also so wicked cool? That's right, one little boy sure does. His mommy drives a big red monster truck, and it is awesome. It bounces and smashes and takes him on amazing adventures all over the country. And this big red monster truck, they can do anything, they can go anywhere, and best of all, they do it together. What a fantastic book. It really is a fantastic book. Mommy's Big Red Monster Truck by Allison Paul Kolakowitz. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Dr. Connie Tate and her wonderful roll-on reading children's books. There's 3 of them right now. There's Scooter Boy, there's Roll-On, and Sylvester's Catastrophic Tale. I love Dr. Connie Tate. She really was an amazing guest on the show, and she created a little poem for us to read and share with you today. It's summertime, and it's time to read. Curl up with a book. There's no better deed. Reading is magical. Just open a book. You can travel the world from your own cozy nook. You're going to love meeting all the characters in Dr. Connie Tate's books. There's Cal. Cal is the star of Scooter Boy, and he's a really cool character. Ren is the delightful character that you'll meet in Roll On, and Ren was inspired by Dr. Connie Tate's granddaughter. And of course, there's Sylvester. You and your family are just going to root for Sylvester's safe return and Sylvester's Catastrophic Tale. Now, all of these great roll-on reading books are available on Amazon or at LuckyJennyPublishing.com. And don't forget to visit Dr. Tate's website. It's www.rollonreading.com. No spaces, rollonreading.com. You go there, you can download all sorts of great free activities. That's rollonreading.com, where you find all of the great books by Dr. Connie Tate. Joining us right now from high above New York City, he is the author of a really fun picture book, and it's challenging for me. So I'm going to give the title of the book is The Last Surviving Dinosaur, TyrantoCrankaTsuris. Please welcome to the show, Stephen Joseph. Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Chad?
I am wonderful. So I know I didn't get the name of the dinosaur perfect. So tell us the exact way that we pronounce the name of your dinosaur.
The TyrantoCrankaTsuris.
All right. I got to get that T sound in there. So
yeah.
This is awesome. So, it's a fun book. Why don't you start off by telling us about the book and all the fun we'll have reading it with our kids?
Well, the book is actually about me growing up in the Bronx, and I grew up in a Jewish home, and I had a lot of cranky relatives, and they all complained about their problems. Like it was kind of an event to get together and complain who had more problems, which in the Yiddish it's called tsuris, but not just any problems. The worst problems you could even imagine. That you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, and everybody had worse and worse problems. So it starts off going back in the past, and then later on, I am a father, and I have my daughter, and when she has a little crankiness of her own, I put her in a timeout, and then I tell her about the most dangerous dinosaur on the planet. She was the tiniest dinosaur, and how all human beings evolved from this one special dinosaur, the TyrantoCrankaTsuris.
Well, this is wonderful. I think the custom of relatives getting together and moaning and groaning about their woes and all their troubles. I think it goes across cultural lines because I'm Irish and we heard a lot of that growing up too. But
sure.
I'm imagining that. Yeah, I can just picture that in my mind. All of your relatives kind of coming together, and it's I got an elbow. Oh wow, I got two elbows that are bad, and I got a bad shoulder, and that's wonderful. And isn't it neat, especially in these days where everybody seems to be really, really overly sensitive about a lot of things, that we can still kind of laugh at ourselves.
Yeah, that's the big part. How funny we are, and and just even the TyrantoCrankaTsuris, how adorable she is, and just because she gets to be a little bit cranky, and just have fun with our own crankiness.
Mm-hmm.
And not to try to overcome it, but to acknowledge it. Hey, that's who we are.
Yeah, and sometimes acknowledging it can kind of alleviate a lot of the anxiety. We get cranky sometimes because we're anxious, and then the more cranky we get, the more anxious we get. And sometimes, especially with kids, if we just kind of acknowledge it with them, they kind of chill out. It's like, oh yeah, I am getting kind of cranky.
That's what we did when my daughter was little. That's when I first created the TyrantoCrankaTsuris. And I would just tell her, when you get a little cranky, instead of just cranking out all your tsuris without stopping, just notice that you're a little cranky and just tell us that you have a little TyrantoCrankaTsuris in you and give us a little warning. And once you have the warning, then it's like, okay, we know that's where you are, and we get a little cranky. We'll have a little Crankasaurus ourselves.
And that's really brilliant. And it's amazing. We just had another guest on, Dr. Ron Melmed, who's a behavioral pediatrician who wrote a series of books, and he advocates kids taking the T4S on the ST4 method, which is stop, take time to think, which is exactly what you're asking your daughter to do when she gets cranky, is stop, understand that you're cranky, and let us know, and we'll deal with it. And this is a perfect strategy, and what a fun way to kind of teach kids about this. This it really is a strategy to kind of deal with your upset, and it's like, okay, yeah, everybody gets kind of cranky, and if I acknowledge it and take a moment to breathe, and then life can go on. We can deal with this issue.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely, and it makes it a lot of fun.
So, what was your daughter's reaction when you wrote the book?
Well, she loved it. She said it was a gorgeous book. And she was also a little embarrassed because she saw our story in there. So she's almost 24, so
okay.
she's way past that age. But she's 24 is another weird age where they don't want to acknowledge anything. So. But she enjoyed it. She did enjoy it.
Yes. Being a parent, it doesn't end when they turn 18 and go off to college, does it?
Oh, no, definitely not.
And that's actually one of the beautiful things about being a parent, is that we're always parents. The relationship changes a little bit, and it's a different kind of fun hanging out with our adult kids now. But you're always going to be mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking of mom, one of the things that you mentioned when you asked to be on the show was that you wrote this book after your mom passed away. why did you wait until then?
Well, my mom was a Holocaust survivor, and after she passed away, I'm a runner. I run marathons, and actually did Boston 5 times. So I've been up there running. So when I go running long distances, a lot of times just stories or things fall in my head. And in particular, after my mother passed away, I would hear my mother's voice. And then all of a sudden this story just popped into my head in this sort of way. And I started just writing it down. I wasn't planning on writing this children's book, but it was just one evening after dinner, I just went back by my computer and started typing. And next morning I go, hey, this looks like a story. But it was my mom's voice. And my mom always, she didn't talk in the conversational tone. She talked in more like proclamations. She was like Yogi Berra of Jewish mothers. So how she would talk would be, so just for an example, if I would lose something or if I can't find anything, I don't even have to ask her what it was I lost. I would just say, I can't find something. And my mother would say, where you put it? And then she would pause for 2 seconds. That's where you find it. and she had this syrupy voice. So like in the book, there's Aunt Ruthie, who goes to Florida. Oh, I went to Florida and I got bit by an alligator. And so it's like that all that voice, my mom's voice just kept flying in my head until I had the story.
What a beautiful way to remember your mom. I mean, I'm laughing, but I think our moms would be really happy if remembering them makes us laugh and smile.
Yeah. No, so I think she was very funny. She was a very funny woman, and I think she actually, even though she didn't show it towards the last few years of her life, she always had a smile when she would say whatever she would say with these lines, as if she finally realized, I'm really funny. So maybe if she was still around, she could be like a 95-year-old stand-up comic by now.
Probably, and much better than most of the ones that we see on television right now.
Yeah, definitely.
We're having fun, we're laughing and everything, but I just wanted to take a moment to ask, what was it like growing up with a Holocaust survivor? I hope that's not an insensitive question. It's just that was such an important and horrible moment in history, and certainly something that I've read about. And I've met some survivors during my lifetime, and I'm happy that I had, but I don't think I've met a person, the son of a Holocaust survivor. And I imagine that experience must give you a somewhat different outlook on things.
Well, it kind of does. And it's interesting with children of Holocaust survivors, there are those Holocaust survivors who really talked about their experience and shared their experience. And there are other survivors who talk very little. And my mom was one of those who spoke very little of that. But she would always kind of remind us that she suffered, and also being a child of a Holocaust survivor, what happens is that most of my mom's family did get killed in the Holocaust. So like in the book, there's aunts, there's cousins, there's uncles. There's no grandparents. I never had grandparents growing up because my father's from Romania. He wasn't a concentration camp survivor, but he went to Palestine to avoid the Holocaust back then. But his parents also passed away, so I never had grandparents. And my mother always, like, we would watch something on the Holocaust, my mother would have to always say, I lived through that, why should I watch it? So it was always there. It was always there. And I feel like there's a survival instinct in me because of that. Just my personal life, even things I write. I'm an attorney. I wrote an article, survival guide for outside counsel. I manage outside counsel. One of the books I'm writing right now is actually a survival guide, Thrive and Survive, for negotiation. So it always seems like surviving is like some sort of element in what I do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly it was such a big. Obviously, thank goodness that your mom did survive and that she's passed that strength on to you. And it's wonderful that you're remembering her and I think helping us all remember, because that's something that moment in time we absolutely cannot forget. And as times as the last survivors pass away, we need to have people like you who are just not spending your life reminding us of it, but just making sure that we remember that we can't repeat that history and we have to move forward. And I think children's books are a wonderful way just to teach kids empathy and the value of friendship and the value of respecting every human being.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a very powerful moment in my life. I was working before I became was able to figure out how to make a living as a educational magician. I was working in a school for kids with severe developmental disabilities. These are kids who be 10, 12 years old, but were functioning on a 6-month-old level or 3-month-old level. They needed help with everything. And my job was to take them out into the community and do typical things. So we would go to the circus and the zoo. And I remember one field trip we were at the science museum, and one of the girls in the school was a very beautiful young woman, and she was actually able to move on her own and walk, and she had this beautiful smile and beautiful eyes. And she went over to this gentleman, and they just stared at each other. And one of the things I noticed when I looked over at the gentleman, he had the tattoos on his wrist, the numbers. Mm-hmm. And it was like, and I made that connection that here is this person who survived this horrible thing, meeting, a person with her own challenge. And it was just a moment where there's just two human beings were smiling and acknowledging each other. But it just was this powerful memory that has lived with me from 35 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing those little things that touch you. I know, one of the great things about writing a children's book, other than like the pictures, I get from people sending me their kids reading the book, I gave a book to an autistic kid or a family with an autistic child, and he can't read, but he can't stop looking at the dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. And he goes, it's his favorite book. Or I gave it to a person who takes care of foster kids, this little boy Elijah, and his dream is he's separated from all his siblings, and his dream is to one day to be reunited with all his family members, and the book just somehow gives him strength. Mm-hmm. And he just, again, he can't stop looking at the book, which is just really, that makes it all, just like you could just, it charges me up for the rest of the day when I hear things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That must be incredible. Now, What's the reaction been for your colleagues? You're up in the World Trade Center at the top of the world, overlooking New York City, and so you're obviously a successful attorney, and so you're in a very different world. What do your colleagues think of the fact that now you're a children's author?
Well, they love it. I get to sign them a copy, and they have it proudly on their desk in their offices, and I have colleagues inside I work for a company, but then I manage attorneys around the country, and it's great where I have relationships with some of these attorneys for over 20 years, and I send them a signed copy of the book. And essentially what I write in the book, and I thank them for taking on all those bigger and badder dinosaurs. And I thank them for helping me out, but also for the relationship we had. And all these attorneys, they have it proudly displayed in their office. So I know that from Alaska to Florida, I have people who have that book right in their office on their desk.
That is wonderful. Now I want to know, is there a part of you who, and I don't know how much time, if any, you spend in court, but is there a part of you that would really like to kind of jump up in court and say, Your Honor, I object, you're being a TyrantoCrankaTsuris?
Well, no, actually, usually what I do is I do a lot of mediation.
Okay.
And I travel around the country mediating, and I get to play the TyrantoCrankaTsuris.
Well, lucky for you. That's very good. One of the things too I love about the book is the illustrations are wonderful. And they really fit. It's really neat when the illustrations absolutely fit the story and the tone of the story.
Well, and that was probably the funnest part of, I guess, editing the book. And just to give you a little, background story, the original story, Aunt Ruthie, when I originally wrote it, she had diabetes and she had her foot amputated. So when I got the illustrations back, I get a picture of an amputated foot, and I go, well, maybe that's not really appropriate for a children's book. But then I came up with that she went to Florida and she got bit by an alligator and she grew reptile feet. And of course, the TyrantoCrankaTsuris also gets bit by an alligator. And the TyrantoCrankaTsuris gets to drag the alligator back from Florida, where they fall in love and they get married, and live happily ever after. So that changed the whole story and, made it a lot more fun.
Absolutely.
But the one thing is, it was funny again with editing, we all evolved from, the TyrantoCrankaTsuris and the TyrantoCrankaTsuris. And then there's the pictures of all the babies around the world crying in the book. And the first draft, there actually were some happy babies. And I had to tell my illustrator, Andy Case, that, we need cranky babies. We can't have anybody happy in that picture. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun trying to get it just right.
Yeah. And it must have been just really fun for you too, just being in a completely different realm of life, going from a media, where you're, in this kind of confrontational situation to just kind of having fun and relating a story and working with an illustrator, making fun pictures.
Oh yeah. That was a blast. Yeah. Especially because it wasn't a planned event. I didn't think one day I'm going to write a kid's book, and then all of a sudden something flies out of my head onto paper, and then I kept thinking about how great a picture book it would be, and everything just worked out.
Well, I'm really excited, and I'm glad that your mom was speaking to you when you were running all those miles, preparing for the Boston Marathon and the other marathons. Is she whispering any news story ideas to you right now?
Well, I have ideas. I don't know. Again, it's one thing of having a story. I have, there's a story, Gilta Gefilte. Gefilte fish, it's a Jewish delicacy, and my mother made the world's best gefilte fish. And, gefilte fish, it looks so unappetizing. It's grounded up, carp and whitefish, boiled with carrots and onions and salt, and some people put sugar in it, and it creates a jelly with the fish, and it looks kind of disgusting, and you put horseradish on it, and it's all about like Jewish guilt, kind of thing where and it was like a beautiful fish growing up, and then with all the guilt became at the end an old gefilte fish, which, but then she gets to meet, this, and she becomes an artist, but she meets Vito Herring, who also happens to be an artist, and it's just a story in my head right now. But
well, we can't wait for it to come out. As you're talking about that story, and talking about the Last Surviving Dinosaur, these are obviously fun books for any family from any culture. And I'm just imagining how much fun it would be to try to pronounce all the names of the dinosaurs as you're reading it. I know that's one of the things that my kids loved when I would read to them is, when my speech impediment would come out and I wouldn't be able to say the words. But I also think that these stories, I think they will resonate with a lot of people and a lot of adults. I think they'd be fun for adults too. Yeah.
That's it. Well, I used to love reading out loud different characters to my daughter. Mm-hmm. And that's what made it fun for me, that you have like 6 different relatives. I get to do 6 different voices, and then there's 3 really mean dinosaurs, and then there's the TyrantoCrankaTsuris. So it's just so much fun. And yes, the thing about the book is it's a lesson not just for kids but grown-ups. Mm-hmm. It's just as much, it's just, where, if I'm with my spouse and I'm feeling cranky, for whatever reason, had a bad day or whatever, I don't have to, I could just stop for a second, mm-hmm. and just use it, I just use it myself.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Well, where can we find the Last Surviving Dinosaur?
Well, it's on Amazon, mm-hmm. and it's on Barnes & Noble websites, and it's pretty much listed through Ingram and all those book sites, so it could be found pretty much all over online. And gave a few copies to Hoboken Library, and going to be at a book festival in Hoboken signing books on June 8th, so that's all exciting. I have a website, www.thelastsurvivingdinosaur.com, which also includes how to use your own TyrantoCrankaTsuris, which is very important.
Very important.
So, lots of different places.
That is wonderful. Well, we've been talking to the author of The Last Surviving Dinosaur, TyrantoCrankaTsuris, Stephen Joseph. Stephen, I'm so excited that you came on the show today, and I'm really looking forward to. I know you're a busy attorney, but I really think you have something here, and we're looking forward to your next book.
Well, thank you very much, Jed.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Lori Olinsky. She is a debut author. She'll be here to tell us about her brand new debut book, Being Small Isn't So Bad After All. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. You know, one of the things that Lori is discovering, as every debut author discovers, is that once the book is written, that's when the real work starts. That's right. That's right. As an author of a book, you are responsible for doing most of the marketing. And that's whether you're published by a giant publishing company or a smaller publisher. And certainly that's the case if you are an independent author. Marketing the book is such a big job, and it can be very, very difficult. We have some great ways to help you market the book. Of course, you can advertise here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our rates are incredibly reasonable, and it gives you access to thousands and thousands of fans of KidLit, of children's books. We also have our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. We have a panel of evaluators here, educators here, parents, their kids. And if they think that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. You can learn all about our author services by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Author Services button. Hey, I want to thank Stephen Joseph for joining us today. Be sure to check out his really fun book, The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the TyrantoCrankaTsuris. We also want to thank Allison Paul Flakowitz. Be sure to check out her big red monster truck. And Dr. Connie Tate, make sure you check out her Roll On Reading books. Go to her website, rollonreading.com. I also want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. She is so very, very helpful and does so much for the show. I also want to thank my beautiful wife for all of the support that she gives me. And, of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for not being a TyrantoCrankaTsuris, for being understanding and caring with your kids, for listening to the show and being part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. And most of all, thank you so much for reading with your kids. Every time you do that, you're making the world a better place. I'll be looking through the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.